Well, here we are now on Bolivar Heights. Bolivar Heights, that's probably more familiar to you than what our last location was. A moment ago, we were at the far northern extremity of Bolivar Heights, overlooking the ridge that goes down, the slope that goes down to the Potomac River. So we were literally on the northern flank of Bolivar Heights. We've moved about a mile south. Bolivar Heights is about 1 3/4 mile wide. Now remember my triangle. That Bolivar Heights is down here. It's down here. It's the lowest edge of the triangle, but it's also the longest. 1 3/4 mile wide position that Miles must defend. Why 1 3/4 mile? Because the northern flank, where we were a moment ago, the Potomac River, and the southern flank, the Shenandoah River. So Camp Hill, which you can see Camp Hill now. Look at that large brick building in the middle of that illustration, the very large building with the cupola. All right, that building was here during the battle. It didn't look like that, and it wasn't that big, but there was a large brick building that would have stood out on Camp Hill at that time, brick, that was the home of the U.S. Armory Superintendent. In fact, it was known as the Superintendent's Quarters. It was also referred to by Jackson and others as Barber's House. Barber, B-A-R-B-O-U-R, Barber's House, named after Alfred Barber, who was the last superintendent of the United States Army before the war erupts. That's where he lived. So you would see that house in 1862, but it was much smaller than what you see today, no cupola. Then as you move to your right, you'll see a modern looking brick building that's lower to the right of the historic building. Well, that's on Camp Hill, and that's literally right on the edge where it starts to slope down to the Shenandoah River. So you may be able to discern that flank, that slope that goes down to the river. That's the southern end of Camp Hill. Remember, Camp Hill's not very wide. It's only about a half a mile from the Shenandoah to the Potomac. And then if you look to the left of the screen, you'll see another church. A church that is lower than that large brick building with the cupola, but you'll see a church, all right? That is on the northern edge of Camp Hill. And so I point out those landmarks because remember, that becomes Miles's last line of defense. If he gets in trouble where we're standing right now on this 1 3/4 mile position, he can't hold it, his infantry can't defend it, and that's tough. 1 3/4 mile with 11,000 plus infantry, that's not good. He can go back there, and it's tight. It's a tight infantry defense. And remember, there's earthworks there. So the infantry can get behind the earthworks on Camp Hill. And remember, there's 20-pounder Parrott rifles looking right at you, right at us. Here on Bolivar Heights, we could fire those 20-pounders and just scald this mountaintop right here. And so if the Confederates take Bolivar Heights, because Miles doesn't have enough men to hold it with his infantry, he can withdraw down into this valley and then back up Camp Hill, where you see the large brick building with the cupola, hold that position, have his flanks protected by the Potomac River and the Shenandoah River, and really defend the position. And remember also, he's got troops on Maryland Heights. About a third of his force is up there on top of the mountain, Maryland Heights, okay? So Miles sees now the Confederates. He can visibly see them. On September the 13th, which is a Saturday, here they come. He can see them. He can see them coming from 3 different positions. They're coming to take Maryland Heights. They're coming to take Bolivar Heights. And they're coming to take Loudon Heights. Well, think about what I just said. September 13th, Confederates arriving simultaneously. Oh my, this is literally a miracle. They all arrive about the same time. So there's nowhere for Miles to get out. There's no hold. They converge almost simultaneously. Jackson, with almost 15,000 men, coming in from the west towards Bolivar Heights. Lafayette McLaws with 2 divisions. His division, McLaws' division, and the division of Richard Herron Anderson are coming in from the north towards Maryland Heights. And then out here on Loudon Heights Coming up on the opposite side of that mountain, coming through Virginia, marching from south to north, is John G. Walker with his division. And so 3 Confederate divisions coming up towards Bolivar Heights, 2 Confederate divisions up here heading towards Maryland Heights, 1 Confederate division coming against Loudon Heights. Again, all totaled about 30,000 men, representing about 2/3 of the Confederate Army. Oh yeah, I know. Everybody argues about Confederate Army strength. Forget that. There's 9 infantry divisions in the Army of Northern Virginia. 9. 6 of them are coming here. All right? So, Miles, nervous, anxious. Remember, most of his men, virtually 2 out of every 3 of his men, have never seen a Confederate. They've never fired a gun at an enemy. And they certainly have never seen the elephant. And so these are truly raw men here. Miles doesn't know how they're going to act in battle. He doesn't know how they're going to respond in this engagement. On the other hand, those boys coming up against Loudon Heights, Maryland Heights, here coming towards Bolivar Heights, they're not raw recruits. Jackson's men are not new, strong, experienced veterans. So, September 13th, convergence occurs. Miles is now sealed. He's sealed in this hole. I mentioned earlier that 1/3 of his force is up on Maryland Heights. Where are the rest of them? The rest of them are out here. Almost everybody else is out here on Bolivar Heights. Why? Because 1 3/4 miles to defend. I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm not going to answer it. I want you to think for a moment. I want you to go to Gettysburg. You've all been there. I want you to go to day 3 at Gettysburg. Day 3 at Gettysburg. All right? The Pickett-Pettigrew Charge. Day 3. Now, you all know how many Confederates are making that advance against Meade's position on Cemetery Ridge. But let me ask you this question. How long is Cemetery Ridge? How long is it? And how many Union infantrymen are there initially when that advance begins, the Pickett-Pettigrew Charge attack begins? How many Union infantrymen are holding Cemetery Ridge? You think about that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is you got 1 3/4 miles here from the Potomac River to the Shenandoah River with about 11,000 infantrymen to hold this position. Or for those of you that like to think in terms of spatial relationships, how many yards are in a mile? You think about it. You say, oh, there's 5,280 feet. How many yards is that? 1,760 yards, I think it is. 1,760 yards. All right? We got 1 3/4 miles here with 11,000 men. Now, just do a little quick math. You don't have enough men to place every yard. This is a really thin line up here if you're going to hold the whole thing. So, Miles has the bulk of his infantry here because the bulk of the enemy infantry is out there. Now, what about Loudon Heights? Loudon Heights. How many men are Colonel Miles going to place on Loudon Heights? Now, let me ask you, okay? Remember now, our triangle. Maryland Heights is the tallest. Loudon Heights is the next tallest. And Bolivar Heights is at the bottom. So how many men are we going to put out of our total 14,000? That's everybody, infantry, artillery, cavalry. How many men are we going to put up on Loudon Heights? You got to defend it. Or do you? Do you? Well, I'll just tell you. Colonel Miles puts 0. No Yankee soldier on Loudon Heights. Nobody. Nobody. And you're saying to yourself, well, that's crazy. The Confederates are going after the position. Why doesn't he defend it? He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. For 2 reasons. Number 1, you could put the whole Army in Northern Virginia all 45,000 men up on Loudon Heights. And with their infantry weapons, where we're standing right now here on Bolivar Heights, they can't hurt us. There's rifle shots or musket shots. They can't harm us. We're too far away. By the time a bullet could come this far, we all know that a Civil War bullet potentially could travel up to a mile. But by the time it gets here, we can just stop them with the palms of our hand. Just stop them. They're not going to hurt us. We might feel a little sting, but they're not going to hurt us. They can't penetrate. We are too far away. That's one reason that Miles places no infantry up there. The enemy can't hurt us from there with their infantry. Not possible. Same for Maryland Heights. There's no way they can reach us with infantry, with their infantry weapons, small arms from Maryland Heights. Can't be done. There's another reason Miles doesn't put anybody up there, and that's called the Shenandoah River. He's got a moat between the top of that mountain and where we are. And the Shenandoah River, you can't see it. And the river you see off in the distance, if you look way off in the distance, you can see the river. That's the Potomac River. So that's downstream from the gap. That's downstream from the water gap. But the Shenandoah River is right at the base of the mountain here. This is the Blue Ridge. The Shenandoah River is flowing like this. It's flowing from this direction like this towards the gap, just like this. And that's a moat. It's a wide moat at the bottom of that hill that the enemy would have to cross to get over here to Bolivar Heights. But think about that for a moment. Infantry crossing a river where there's no bridge. There's no bridge. It goes back to my point I made earlier. Infantry is cumbersome. It takes a long, long time to move people. And so you're going to tell me you're going to bring infantry down off of it. Look at that slope. That is a vertical 700-foot cliff right there. 700 foot straight, sheer. You're going to move infantry down the side of that mountain into the Shenandoah River where there's no conveyance for crossing. You can't get across. It's a moat. So Miles doesn't need to put anybody on Loudon Heights. It doesn't make any difference. He can defend this location without protecting Loudon Heights. So he doesn't disperse his forces out there. Maryland Heights, a third of the force. The bulk of his forces out here on Bolivar Heights, because Jackson's coming at us, and we're going to show you in a moment where Jackson can attack and hurt this place. And then we have some infantry supporting the guns on Camp Hill, which is a little more than a mile from here. From here to the gap, incidentally, from here to the heart of the gap is about 2 miles, just to give you a sense of range. So Miles is often condemned, mildly criticized, usually condemned for his lack of defense acumen here, that he wasn't smart, he wasn't wise. Well, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this? There's nothing wrong with this. We're holding the high ground. We got the high ground. We got a place we can retire to that is a very strong bulwark with earthworks. And we're holding the main position where the main enemy attack is going to come from the Shenandoah Valley. Yeah, this is a decent defense. Yeah, you can argue. Okay, go ahead and argue with me. I'm ready. Come on, let's go. This is a decent defense. If you were standing right here with me right now and you could actually visually see it, you would say, sure, yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. The man is not stupid, but he's been betrayed as an idiot.